Welcome to Conversations on the Coast, San Francisco's premier author interview program. Today we're going to give you a very special treat. We are going to talk about a children's book called Animals of the Bible from A to Z, and we're going to talk to an old friend of mine, Alice Camille. Animals of the Bible from A to Z is her newest book, and we're also going to comment on a book that her publisher has just reissued called God's Word is Alive, Reflections on Lectionary Readings. That's the short version of that subtitle. And her publisher is ACTA Publications. Alice, welcome and thanks for coming by.
Thanks, Jim.
You know, way back when we worked together in religious education at Old St. Mary's here in San Francisco, you had not written a single book.
That's true. Right? Well, no, I had not published a single book.
These were in the trunk somewhere?
Yeah. Well, I've been writing since I was 9 years old in pencil, but no one ever wanted to publish those things before.
And you were reading long before that. You were an
at least since
reader.
5, yes.
Yes, but now let's come to the present. Now you are a prize-winning author, 12 books.
I believe it's 12. I've ghostwritten a few, but I take credit for 12.
Well, that's nice. And you've won some awards, a couple of 3 at least, from the Catholic Press Association.
Catholic Press Association.
And
yes.
Something called the Interfaith Religion Communicators Association.
That was really exciting for me. The Religion Communicators Council is an interfaith group, and they look at writings across the board on religion and spirituality, and they have looked at several of the things that I've written for a U.S. Catholic magazine out of Chicago, and they have honored those works. The fact that the judge is usually a Baptist or a Buddhist, and they liked what I had to say as a Roman Catholic was pretty exciting.
That is exciting. Winning book titles include an invitation to the Old Testament, invitation to the New Testament, and I read somewhere, I guess maybe on your website, that you have 3 books in the works.
Yes, I'm doing 2 books for Loyola. They have a series that comes out every year. It's a page a day of reflections, 365 days of the year, and it's called A Book of Grace-Filled Days. I'm doing the books for 2009, which is already finished, and 2010, which I'm working on now.
You're really looking ahead.
And I'm doing a book for Orbis Press. This is my first book for Orbis.
Orbis, yeah. Well, you know, with 12 books published and 3 in the works, you've probably had several publishers already.
Yes.
And you're working on another one now.
That's right.
Now, with ACTA Publications, you have reason to stay with them. Talk about God's Word is Alive and what happened there. God's
Word is Alive was originally with Bayard Publications, the 23rd Publications at the time, and then it was bought by Bayard in Connecticut. And that was my first book. It was a compilation of reflections on the Sunday readings in the Catholic lectionary, which is also used by Lutherans and Methodists and Episcopalians. And that came out in 1998, and it had a good run. It was out for almost 10 years, and then they decided to make way for other titles that were similar in their barn. But they said, you know, it's still a good seller for us, so if you want to use this material elsewhere, you have the contract, you have the con. So I took it to ACTA and said, you know, I'd like to bring this book out again. So what we've done is basically updated the liturgical information in the front. There's a calendar that now goes through the year 2016, so that you can find the reflections for each Sunday and feast day and holy day between now and 2016.
You know, in the introduction to that book, I think you give out some sage advice about reading the Bible. Reading the Bible, you say, is not for the sake of getting the history straight, but for the purpose of finding our place in the story. And it's the story that you say in another place which has continued to fascinate you. And that's an interesting way to approach it.
Well, I was an English major before I ever went to theology school, and so the story was always my big motivating factor. I always say that I was disobedient as a child when I was told to stop reading at the table or when it was time to go to eat, and I had a pure disobedience in that sense, because my greatest loyalty was always to the story, even over my loyalty to my family. And I wanted to continue to write, and then when I found the great story in the Bible, that became the story that motivated me.
You know, one of the interesting things about so much that you do is very much in evidence in God's Word is alive, and that is that you always have something going on, and then some practical idea is, concludes whatever you're commenting on. For example, Christmas, the Mass during the day, action response. In this season of gift giving, remember to give love. Give love in warm presence, kind attention, sympathetic listening. Give love so that you can become love. And that's the thing in your style that I like. Now look, Animals of the Bible from A to Z. We will get to it. We will talk about it when we come back. I promise.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
Two books we're talking about today with one wonderful friend, Alice Camille. Animals of the Bible from A to Z is one of them, and the other one is God's Word is Alive. We spent enough time, I think, Alice, on God's Word is Alive, so we better get into Animals of the Bible.
We've got 26 letters to go.
Yes, we got to go through them fast. Now, this is a children's book published by Acta Publications, who never before published a children's book. How did you pull that off?
Well, I have a really good relationship with my publisher. He's done quite a few of my books already, and at least some of them have been selling well. So he was willing to take
and winning prizes.
And
we
winning
must admit that.
Prizes.
Yes.
So when he got together with me last year, and he was saying, "Well, what new things do you have for me?" And I said, "Well, I was thinking about doing this children's book, Animals of the Bible from A to Z."
And I can see him, the head shaking from
and
side
he says,
to side.
Acta doesn't do children's books. And I said, I know
ever.
that. I said, but I've got a wonderful illustrator. My niece is an illustrator, and she's doing the pictures for me. And, of course, in his mind, he's thinking it's Crayola crayons. A 5-year-old is putting together these drawings. And, of course, all of my work has been adult nonfiction, and so he's just thinking this is a very bad idea. And he's trying to figure out a way to gently let me down. And I had already prepared a book proposal, and I had my niece do 3 of the illustrations for the book. So I handed
Now, her name is Sarah Evelyn Showalter. And Showalter. And she has a degree from someplace.
Yes, a degree from Edinburgh in Pennsylvania. And she's an art teacher. She's actually teaching art to grammar school children on a military base in South Korea at this time. And I had met her in China 2 years ago for a vacation in Beijing, and it was wonderful. We went to the Great Wall and all the things you do. And in the course of it, I was telling her my frustrations that I'd been trying to do this children's book since I was in seminary at the GTU across the bay, and that I had gone through 3 illustrators already, but the first one got ordained to the priesthood and didn't have time. Imagine, a priest didn't have time to draw pictures anymore. And then I got another illustrator, and she went on to have 2 children in a row. And strangely enough, after she had children, she no longer had time to illustrate.
Oh, you had to turn to a nepotistic solution to your problem, and you got the folks at ACTA to say
yes. I mean, my publisher flipped through my proposal, didn't even read anything, just went straight to the pictures so that he could turn me down gently. And he looked at the 3 pictures, and he said, "I can tell you right now, we're going to do this book."
See that? That's the way it happens in book publishing today.
It rarely happens that way.
Bring your pictures. Pictures of a bear that learns to be a better neighbor, things like that. C is for the camel that can't fit through narrow places.
That was the first illustration that Sarah did, and it was on the strength of that one that I knew she was the right illustrator for the book.
Yeah. She really got the eye of the needle, didn't she?
She did indeed.
So now we're underway, and now the animals that you chose were chosen to fit Bible verses, right?
They're all from different stories of the Bible. I tried to balance between the Old Testament and the Hebrew scriptures and the New Testament. I also wanted to put in, because I'm Roman Catholic, the Deuterocanon, which are those books that are disputed between Christians. And So we got a little bit of everything in there. Everything except St. Paul, because he doesn't once mention an animal in any of his letters.
Stodgy old fellow. Really, he screams a lot, but he doesn't mention any. Never?
No animals at all. I read the Bible cover to cover, and it was the only part of the Bible that didn't mention animals.
Well, these pictures are good. Nepotism pays off in this case. And, I like one called N is for Nestlings, so encouraged by their parents. It's a beautiful, beautiful illustration of a couple of small birds with their parents in a nest. It's just really touching and moving. What age range are we talking about here?
Well, the publisher wanted to put ages on the back, so I mentioned 3 to 6. He expanded it 2 to 8, but we've been telling people that children of all ages will really like this book. I sent it to a 95-year-old nun friend of mine, and she said she was going on retreat the week she received it, and she was only taking her Bible and animals of the Bible with her on her retreat. So it's even good if you're 95.
Well, there's an age range, age 2 to 95. We ought to find a few buyers in there, Alice, for this book. It should go very, very well.
It's coffee table quality. It's a really nice hardbound book.
Yeah, it is a beautiful package, and actually, in a way, you could say it's divided into 2 sections. We have the front part of the book where you meet all of the animals, from A to Zebra. And then you have a part in the back that's called Pages for Grown-Ups. What's that about?
Yes, the Pages for Grown-Ups was my biggest contribution to the book. I wrote the verse from A to Z, but obviously it's only 1 sentence per page, which was the easiest book I ever had to write. But in the back, I was mostly interested in giving not only the Bible citations for those who are not familiar with these stories, but I also put in a little section, Lessons to Learn.
A little lesson, as I said before. Alice Camille goes trippingly through the Bible, A to Z. And we're going to talk, when we come back, about some that I find difficult. And also, which she found the ultimate challenge, the letter U. Don't miss it.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email JimFosterCoc@gmail.com.
This is Jim Foster. It is Conversations on the Coast, Animals of the Bible from A to Z by Alice Camille. That's the main book today, published by Acta Publications. And I'm going trippingly through this book. I'm really enjoying it. I'm loving the illustrations and the biblical references. And then I come to the letter U. And you say, U. And if there was a unicorn, he must have missed the boat. Now, that's nasty business. Huh?
Yes. You was a big challenge for me because although I've read the Bible cover to cover several times, there are no animals that start with the letter U. In fact, I couldn't think of an animal outside the Bible that started with the letter U. But, of course, the one animal that does come to mind is that mythical creature, the unicorn. And I thought, how will I work that in? A lot of children often ask when you're telling animal stories from the Bible if there were unicorns. And the only reason I can think of that there might not be a unicorn is because he was not able to get to Noah's Ark in time. And so that's the picture.
Or as she tells the parents, obviously, we're just having some fun here. There are no animals in the Bible that start with the letter U, and there are no unicorns because, as far as we know, there never were any. But kids often ask, why are there no dinosaurs in the Bible? And the answer to that is their bones had not yet been discovered or recognized. So you're really covering the whole paleontological situation here.
With a nod to natural law and evolution and the Catholic position.
Now, this is not the only difficult one. I mean, that's, even you had trouble with U.
Yes.
But there are letters that I had trouble with. Now, there's the letter K.
Ah,
all right?
yes.
K. K is for kites, you say. And K is for kites that will not be without their mates. And the illustration is illustration of two birds sitting on a chimney, it looks like.
A ruined tower of a castle.
What's a kite? Is a kite a bird?
A kite is a kind of bird. Yes, it's a kind of hawk, small hawk. And it was one of two K animals in the Bible. The other one escapes me at the moment, but I liked this one because it's from Isaiah. It's part of a prophecy that says when cities go bad, the animals, nature, will move back in from the desert and take the ruined cities of the people who've been banished or exiled. And so we put a ruined castle with a pair of kites, and they will not be without their mates because they will be able to propagate on the remains of the city.
I is for insects. I didn't care for that one either. I is for the insects special insects that will eat when God says eat.
That is obviously a story from the book of Exodus, when the 10 plagues overtake Egypt. And it's funny, I had dinner last night with a woman from Israel, and she turned to that page right away, and she said, "Oh, it's the 10 hits." She said, "In Hebrew, we call them the 10 hits." I said, "Well, we call them the plagues here, but same idea." And she said, insects, she said, it's a little bit of a reach. The word insect is not used in the Bible, but obviously these bugs do come, the locusts come, various flies and gnats come, and so I thought insects was a good overarching name for those.
In your little commentary in the back on the letter I for insects that will eat when God says eat, it opens this way. When Moses squares off with Pharaoh, it's smackdown time in Egypt.
Yes.
Pharaoh has wealth and power of his throne. Moses has the God of Israel on his side. 10 terrible plagues later, it's obvious that this matchup was no contest. That's great stuff. That's really wonderful.
I had a lot of fun with the back of the book, I admit. And it really is, for me, this book is the Bible for beginner readers, but also for beginner Bible readers of all ages.
I think you're right.
Who may not know these stories that well, but need a little nudge to take a look at them.
And it's a wonderful way to get kids into the Bible. And, if the parent or whoever's working does indeed take out the Bible and go to the proper place, wonderful things might happen.
A lot of my friends who are parents or grandparents and have purchased the book have said that they've had to sit down and read the back first so that they can talk to their kids about these stories knowledgeably.
Okay. My favorite, or I guess one of my favorites, R is for the ravens that brought food to good Elijah. The stories of the early prophets, Elijah and his replacement, Elisha, are full of hair-raising adventures and near-miss escapes, from the contest with the priest of Baal at Mount Carmel to his departure from this world on a fiery chariot. Elijah, in particular, captures the religious imagination. And part of it was that the ravens, when he was cast into the desert, brought him food. And that's a sweet story, and one that even I can grasp. And, it's not beyond the reach of anyone. So, Animals of the Bible from A to Z, Alice Camille. That's what we've been talking about. This has been Conversations on the Coast, and I'm Jim Foster.
Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at Jim Foster COC and email jimfostercoc@gmail.com.